All right, everybody, let's dive into some Montreal city politics.
You want to know how this city works? And you were kind enough to give us this stack of Montreal City Council meeting minutes.
From May 2024, not exactly light reading, I'll admit,
Right.
but there's gold in these pages. But it takes a trained eye.
There is. Yeah, it's easy to get kind of lost in the jargon
Oh, yeah.
and all the budget numbers.
Yeah.
But hidden in, there are some really interesting clues about what the city's thinking about, what it's worried about, even its personality.
It's true. It's true.
Yeah.
It's like we've got this big old puzzle.
And we're here to help put the pieces together.
Exactly.
So before we get into the weeds here, anything in this document, and we both had a chance to look it over, anything that jumped out at you? Anything that made you raise an eyebrow?
Well, a few things. I mean, one thing, there's this line item for a bike path bridge
Yeah.
that's actually more expensive than the bike path itself,
Oh, wow.
which, it kind of tells you Montreal is serious about this whole green transportation thing.
Yeah.
But it makes you wonder, right, what's going on with the rest of the budget?
Right.
They've got to spend that much on a bridge.
Well, and it just shows how these little details, they reveal a much larger story, don't they?
Exactly.
About priorities and such.
Exactly.
Now, speaking of the things that we notice, you mentioned that there were a lot of questions, or at least more than usual, about policing
Right.
in this document. What's the deal with that?
Yeah, there are a bunch of concerns from people about the closure of Police Station 46 in Anjou. And then there are questions about police presence, like on the metro and buses.
Mm-hmm.
It seems like maybe there are concerns about safety, just generally.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how or if the city addresses that.
It will. And, they have to balance it too, right? Like they need to keep the city safe,
Right.
but they have to listen to what people are saying too.
Yeah, it's tricky.
Yeah,
It's a tough job governing a city, that's for sure.
for sure.
Before we go any further, I can't get past this thing about the laser company
Oh, yeah.
that the city's thinking about using
Yeah.
for public art. What is going on with that?
Yeah, there's this big debate about this one art installation.
Yeah.
Apparently it's going to be pretty spectacular, lots of lasers.
Oh, really?
But some people on the council are not so happy about it.
Not everybody's into Pink Floyd lasers, I guess.
Apparently not. Yeah, they're mostly worried about how much it's going to cost.
Uh-huh.
And, I mean, even if it's like good art,
Right.
I guess that's a whole other debate.
Oh, for sure.
Well, this is where the rubber hits the road, I guess, with these minutes, and we
Right.
see how things actually function.
Because, well, you know more about this than I do, but
Montreal has this kind of city within a city thing going on, right?
it does, yeah.
With the boroughs and the central city.
Exactly. So you've got, like, the main city council
Mhm.
that makes all the decisions for, the entire city.
Mhm.
But then each borough has its own council, too.
Right, right.
And they're supposed to, like, manage the stuff that only affects them,
Yeah.
And these minutes are interesting because you can see both of those groups, working at the same time.
Right?
And sometimes, maybe they disagree with each other.
Sure, sure. And there's that term that I saw in here a bunch of times.
Compétence d'agglomération.
Oh, yeah.
I'm probably not saying that right, but
You got it.
what does that even mean?
It means, like, who has the power to make the decision? Like, is it a borough thing or is it a whole city thing?
Which is huge when you think about it,
It is.
especially if you're, a resident
Yeah.
and you're concerned about something.
Totally.
Like, you got to know who to talk to
Exactly.
and where to go to make your voice heard.
Yeah. And, I mean, the bike path, the expensive bike path bridge,
Yeah.
that's a great example, right? Because transportation is something the city controls.
Okay.
So it doesn't matter what the borough thinks.
Fascinating. See, this is the kind of stuff most people would just gloss over.
But it's actually super important.
Oh, totally.
So let's talk money.
I tried to get through these budget reports, and wow, it's a lot of numbers.
It's a lot, yeah.
Did anything stand out to you?
More than you'd think, actually.
Okay.
I mean, yeah, it's kind of a jumble, but you can actually tell a lot about what the city cares about by how it spends its money.
Oh.
Like, for example, they're spending a ton on keeping the parks and trees looking good.
Yeah, there was that big contract for tree maintenance, right?
Yeah, over $1 million.
That's a lot of tree trimming.
It is a lot, but, maybe that's connected to the whole bike path thing. Like, maybe they're trying to make Montreal greener overall,
Okay.
On the other hand, there are definitely hints that they might need to cut some other stuff from the budget.
Oh, like what?
Well, a few people brought up maybe cutting social programs,
Hmm.
and some of the cultural stuff might be on the chopping block, too.
Interesting. So they're willing to spend on the environment, but what about people?
Right. And that's where it gets kind of interesting because,
Yeah.
I mean, the numbers only tell you so much, right?
Right.
But there are other parts of these minutes that give you a better idea of what Montreal cares about.
Like what?
Like, there's a whole section dedicated to remembering the Holocaust
Right.
and how Montreal has always been a city that welcomes people who have been through a lot.
Right, which speaks to diversity and inclusion.
Yeah.
And we saw that in other parts of the minutes too, like all those reports on, different cultures and how women are treated.
Yeah, exactly.
It seems like they're really trying to make things fair for everybody.
That's the idea, anyway.
Right. But are they actually doing it?
Right, that's the question.
It's one thing to say you care,
Exactly.
but it's another thing entirely to actually put the money behind it.
It is. And, it all comes back to how the city is structured, too, right?
Okay, yeah, let's go back to
The whole city versus borough thing.
Yeah, how does that tension actually play out in these minutes? Give me an example.
Okay, so there's this big debate about how loud music venues can be,
Okay.
specifically the alternative music venues.
Sure.
And it becomes this whole thing about, like, okay, we want Montreal to be a fun city, but we also don't want people who live downtown to go crazy from the noise.
Right. It's a classic dilemma.
It is, totally. And, I mean, it just shows you how complicated it is to run a city, even with something as small as noise.
Yeah.
It's never as simple as it seems.
Right.
We'll see that even more as we keep going through these minutes.
All right, let's do it.
It's like spinning plates, trying to keep everybody happy.
Yeah, totally.
Speaking of keeping everybody happy.
What about these cuts that they're talking about to social programs, you said, and
Right.
cultural initiatives? What does that even mean for people in Montreal?
That's a really good question. And I mean, some people on the council were worried about what would happen if they cut the funding for, like, community centers,
Oh, right.
especially in neighborhoods where people rely on them.
Right, so these cuts could actually really hurt some people.
Yeah, exactly.
And when you say cultural stuff, I mean, it's not just the laser show, right?
No, not just the lasers, no.
What else?
It sounded like they might reduce funding for all kinds of public art,
Mm.
which, I don't know, just seemed kind of sad, Like, Montreal's such a creative city,
Yeah.
and taking away support for art, that's a big deal.
It's a big deal for the artists, too, of course.
Oh, totally.
Like, how are they supposed to, make a living?
Exactly.
It's a tough one.
It is. I guess that's the job of the city council, though, right?
Yeah,
They have to make these choices about where the money goes.
they do.
Yeah.
But it's not just about the money.
It's about values, right? Like,
Yeah.
what kind of city do we want to live in?
Exactly. And, one thing that really struck me when I was reading these minutes was how much people in Montreal actually care.
Yeah.
Like, they're really engaged,
We've talked about the policing stuff and the noise complaints.
Right, but it's more than that.
Yeah, there was a whole bunch of stuff about that.
Yeah, like, people were writing petitions about everything.
Really?
Yeah, from, like, fixing up the parks to making traffic flow better.
Wow. They're not shy.
No, not at all. Which is great, right? I mean, that's how it should be.
It is.
People should have a say in how their city is run.
Right, right. And the best part is, it seems like the council is actually listening.
Yeah, that's what I thought, too.
Like, we saw examples where they changed their minds about stuff based on what people said.
Yeah, exactly. And it's a reminder that even though the city has a lot of power, people can still make a difference.
Yeah, you got to know where to look.
Exactly. Speaking of knowing where to look, remember that tree trimming contract?
Oh, yeah, the $1 million one.
Yeah, that one.
Mm.
I was thinking about that. And, I mean, it's a lot of money, right?
Whoa.
But maybe there's more to it than meets the eye.
What do you mean?
Well, remember, these minutes, they don't tell the whole story.
Right. It's just a snapshot, right?
Yeah, exactly. Like a little glimpse behind the curtain.
Yeah.
But I did some digging, and it turns out that those trees, they're being attacked by this bug, the emerald ash borer.
Oh, I've heard of that. It's a real problem.
It is. So maybe that $1 million, it's not just about making the trees look pretty.
It's about saving them.
Exactly.
Wow. See, that's what I love about these deep dives.
You never know what you're going to find.
Never.
And it just goes to show, you can't always judge a book by its cover or,
A city council meeting by its minutes.
Exactly.
So they're spending all this money to save the trees, which is great. But, earlier you were saying how...
They might have to make cuts in other places.
Right.
Seems like a bit of a contradiction, doesn't it?
It does. It's almost like they're trying to do everything at once.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, I guess is their job, right? But it's not easy.
No, it's not. So where does that leave us? I mean, what's the takeaway here?
That's a good question. I think for me, the biggest takeaway is that even though the city is facing some real challenges,
Hmm.
they're not afraid to tackle them head on.
Right, and they're trying to find creative solutions.
Exactly. And I think most importantly, they're listening to people. They're having these conversations, even if they're messy sometimes.
Which is how it should be, right?
Exactly. It gives me hope,
Me too, me too.
for the future of the city.
And we're back for the final act of our deep dive into Montreal City Council, May 2024. It's been a wild ride, I gotta say.
It has been interesting.
Lots of twists and turns and
And lasers.
lasers. You know, who had thought that city politics could be so fascinating?
Right.
But we've only just scratched the surface here, haven't we?
We have. There's so much more in these minutes than we even have time to talk about.
It's true, it's true. But I think we've highlighted some of the major themes, like how do you balance, a green city
Right.
with economic growth?
Which is a challenge everywhere.
Right.
Right. It's not just a Montreal thing.
Right, exactly. And then there's the whole question of social inclusion, making sure everybody feels safe and welcome.
Right. But also making sure that the city is actually safe.
Exactly.
So it's tough, There's no easy answers.
No, there really aren't. It's a balancing act for sure. But that's kind of what makes it so interesting to me.
Yeah, for
It's
sure.
like, yeah, these are real problems
Yeah.
that real people are dealing with.
Exactly. And what I like about these minutes is that you can see how those problems are being talked about,
Mhm.
Like, it's not just happening behind closed doors.
Right.
People are actually in a room trying to figure it out.
They're having the conversations,
Yeah, even if they disagree sometimes.
which they do
They
a
do.
lot. But that's okay, because at least they're talking. Right.
Exactly. That's what democracy is all about.
Yeah, there you go. That's why we're here, folks.
That's why.
But it's funny, you get so sort of bogged down in the details sometimes.
Oh, yeah.
You forget that there are actual people
Right.
behind all of this, Like, real lives are being affected by these decisions.
Exactly. Like that tree trimming contract, right?
Yeah.
$1 million, that's a lot of money.
It's a lot of money.
But it's also about protecting the trees, which, that's good for everyone.
It's good for everyone, that's right.
Yeah.
So, as we kind of wrap things up here,
Yeah.
what's your overall feeling about Montreal? Having spent all this time,
Really digging into the nitty gritty.
I'm actually feeling pretty optimistic.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, they've got challenges. It's just like any city.
For sure.
But it seems like they're facing them head on. They're trying new things. They're listening to people.
It's true. It's true.
And I don't know, it just feels like a city that's like moving in the right direction.
I get that feeling too. There's a good energy here.
Yeah, definitely.
And I think, for anyone listening who's maybe feeling a little cynical about politics.
Or just, the state of the world in general. Look at this. Look at Montreal,
Exactly. Get involved.
Yeah.
Go to a city council meeting. Make your voice heard.
Yeah. If you don't like something, say something.
Exactly. That's how you make a difference.
On that note, I think we've done our civic duty for the day.
I think we have.
It's been a pleasure, as always.
Thanks for having me.
And to all of you out there, keep exploring, keep asking questions, and we'll see you next time for another deep dive.